Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some significant news. William cuts financial ties to Camilla's family after her ex-husband reveals shocking secrets. As a result of Prince William's decision to cease all financial assistance for Queen Camilla's family, a flood of controversy has been unleashed, which threatens to destroy the illustrious history of the Windsor family. This seismic breach has ripped at the very fabric of the British monarchy, following the unauthorized publication of a profoundly revealing interview with Camilla's ex-husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, who exposes what he describes as her darkest secret. This seismic decision was made. The interview reveals an intricate tapestry of financial manipulation, emotional betrayal, and unyielding ambition that propelled Camilla from the margins of aristocracy to the side of the throne. As the palace frantically tries to control the consequences, this story unfolds like a huge Elizabethan play. It is filled with hidden agendas, fragmented alliances, and the unstoppable march of truth. As a result of the leaking of papers, which has caused a media frenzy, the increasing scrutiny from the world community, and the exposing of the human cost, the Windsors are on the verge of undergoing a metamorphosis. Are we seeing the end of an age or a terrible rebirth to come? The narrative of Camilla's ascent serves as a sharp reminder that every victory comes with a price, and it is told in the corridors of power where secrets fester like old scars. A royal rift is disclosed. Like most 21st century earthquakes, it began with a quiet upload symbol flash. A confidential audio file which included the confession of Andrew Parker Bowles, the former husband of Queen Camilla, had ricocheted from encrypted forums to breakfast table podcasts in a matter of hours, and it exploded within the palace like a bomb in a drawing room. Prince William, the heir to the throne, and a reluctant crusader had called top courtiers to Kensington for an emergency meeting by the time the sun began to set. Courtiers sent a brief communication to Buckingham the next morning before dawn. The message said that all financial assistance to Camilla's extended family was to be terminated immediately. The decree shattered the facade of royal unity that Charles III had labored to polish since his ascension to the throne. Although households were whispering about betrayal and tabloids were screaming about the great divorce not of people but of money, watchers insist that the decision was less about public theater and more about William's private conscience. It was a line in the sand between the future he intends to inherit and the compromises that came before. Andrew Parker Bowles, the catalyst, is heard speaking. Andrew Parker Bowles, a soldier, an aristocrat, and a former heartthrob of London's swinging 60s, never desired to have another spin on the media carousel. However, he claims that he recorded a memoir-length interview for My Children so that they would know why the marriage died. The file, which was meant for a family archive, instead became available to the public domain. He was 84 years old at the time of the interview. His gruff voice intones, "I never had any interest in being in the spotlight." On the other hand, quiet has its limitations, and truth must be heard, particularly in situations when the whole kingdom is based on a delusion. According to Bowles, the truth is not only about Camilla's adultery, which has been studied extensively for a long time, but rather about the clandestine financial empire that Camilla constructed beginning in the late 1980s. According to him, she was able to gain control first over Charles and then over the monarchy itself by using offshore trusts, covert property shells, and opaque charity companies. Upon the release of the video, William faced a daunting array of choices: either sever the crown's ties with Camilla's relatives, expose himself to potential infighting that could stifle the situation, or endure the tumultuous period and hope for fading public memory. He decided to go in the first direction, and by doing so, he caused the most severe internal conflict within the family since Edward VIII abdicated his throne in 1936. Andrew and Camilla, before the crown, are the originals of aristocracy. It is necessary to go back in time to the opulent playgrounds of England in the 1960s to comprehend the magnitude of the collapse. Andrew was born in 1939 and was the son of Derek Parker Bowles, a dashing lieutenant who counted the Queen Mother as one of his hunting buddies. It seemed that Andrew was bound for a peaceful tenure in the household cavalry. He attended Sandhurst, dazzling regimental messes, and had impressive results. Born Camilla Shand in 1947, Camilla is a product of the countryside of Sussex, an affinity for horses, and a bohemian sense of humor. According to her friends, she was catnip to titled rebels because she was unpretentious, averse to snobbery, and most importantly, capable of making even the most pompous duke snort with amusement over a cigarette when he was standing behind a marquee. It was during a Windsor polo tournament in 1966 that they first laid eyes on each other. It was a social kaleidoscope where debutantes and soldiers were rubbing shoulders with princes. The sparks flew. According to Andrew, there was a period of time when we believed that we could surpass the expectations. However, those assumptions were irreversible. As Prince Charles embarked on his naval duty in the early 1970s, putting a temporary end to his budding relationship with Camilla, the amount of pressure that was placed on Camilla to settle down increased exponentially. Andrew made the proposal. She agreed to it. They were hailed as the year's most suitable pair by Tatler, which caused society to exhale. The pressures that accompany a marriage of convenience also exist. With children Tom in 1974 and Laura in 1978, weekends spent at Bolhide Manor military parades and county dances, the early years of the Bowles marriage were filled with glamour. There are photographs from that time period that depict sunlit gardens and newborn horses, which are visual shorthand for pleasure in the home. However, Andrew is certain that the diary entries and the late-night phone records reveal a more sinister tale. He does not act as if he were a saint in his own persona. I had some sexual encounters. That was the culture. However, Camilla's rediscovery of Charles in 1980 during his impending marriage to Lady Diana Spencer fundamentally altered the dynamics of their relationship. Andrew admits, she loved Charles, and I, despite my stubbornness, could see that I was becoming a placeholder despite my best efforts. Despite this, the marriage continued to exist, mostly due to inertia rather than devotion, as well as Camilla's developing ability to strategize behind the scenes. Andrew says Camilla became part confidant, part consigliere for Charles after his marriage to Diana ended. Camilla advised Charles on how to safeguard his assets and his reputation. This advice quickly led to aggressive financial decisions. Camilla's financial machines form a hidden empire. Andrew claims that between 1988 and 1992, Camilla established at least 3 trusts in Switzerland. Murky ledger leaks from the time period partially support this assertion. Their objective is to conceal the debts associated with the restoration of Highgrove and to channel rental money from duchy estates in a manner that is inaccessible to media accountants who are inquisitive. An ex-royal auditor who has requested anonymity asserts that Camilla's fingerprints were found on restructuring plans that shifted liabilities into vehicles where freedom of information requests could not reach. How come during the tape, Andrew makes the assertion that security is leverage? Hushkador, legality and solvency might still move Crown officials toward approval of Camilla's eventual marriage to Charles, even if popular enthusiasm for the couple began to fade. The words, "she was playing a 50-year game," come out of his mouth with a mixture of admiration and sadness. Whether or not the maneuvers violated any legal boundaries has not been established. In spite of this, Camilla's queenship is now being threatened by the impression of manipulation, which is the use of financial acumen as a weapon for romantic ascendancy. A family that has been broken apart as a result of the emotional toll inflicted. Within the stone walls of Bolhide, a significant toll was paid. Andrew remembers evenings spent reading over foreign bank records that were discovered in Camilla's desk, the subsequent arguments that ensued, and the tears that the children shed in confusion. Sister Laura, who is married and goes by the name Lopes, seldom talks, but told a friend that the time was like living in a corridor between 2 worlds, the public fairy tale and a private storm. Tom Parker Bowles, who is now a popular food writer, remembers muffled voices behind locked doors, mom's phone always buzzing. In 1993, the Camilla Gate recordings were shown on primetime television, and they showed Charles and Camilla having a private conversation while they were lying on their pillows. Although they were no longer together at the time, Andrew remembers hearing the audio when he was stationed overseas as follows. It was violent, not physically, but spiritually. The annihilation of all hope. Shortly after Camilla reportedly told him, "You were always the bridge." According to his account of the story, Camilla's remark, "You were always the bridge," sounded like a fatal blow, signifying her recognition that their marriage had served as a catalyst for her journey towards something more profound. Divorce occurred in the year 1995. The concept of Charles' marriage and monarchy significantly impacted Camilla's journey. Following the divorce, Camilla's life began to improve. Rehabilitation efforts reintroduced Camilla to Charles as his constant companion. These campaigns included special lunches with prominent editors, highlighting charitable activities and covert interviews. It was in 2005 that they tied the knot, and she was already the Duchess of Cornwall. By 2023, when Charles was crowned king, she had become Queen Consort. Most British citizens, exhausted by feuds that had lasted for decades, accepted the conclusion. But pockets of opposition continued to exist, and within the family, William remained respectful but never fully reconciled, according to those who were privy to the situation. The leaked Bowles interview fueled the growing concern. William's reckoning principle over peace. During the restless week that followed the leak, Prince William gathered with private secretary's attorneys and the Princess of Wales, who was still engaged in public struggles for her health and privacy. William listened, walked the study that was engraved with his mother's initials, and prepared questions. "Do nothing in anger," Kate encouraged, according to one of her assistants. "What is the total amount of the money that Camilla's sister Annabel receives? Which trusts are available? What kind of legal jurisdiction does the duchy have over them or their affairs?" In the event that pressure from tabloids increases, may Parliament require transparency? The answers shook him to his core. Almost £5 million each year distributed among property maintenance, educational bursaries, and heritage advisory retainers. None of these activities were unlawful. They were all quietly usual, and each one is now a reputational bomb. At midnight on the third day, William concluded that the costs of discontinuing the practice outweighed the benefits of continuing it. The Queen received his command at her desk the following morning. According to reports inside the palace, Charles read it in a stony silence, and Camilla fled the room overcome with emotions. There was a public outcry and a frenzy in the media. It was a wild day for the press. The Daily Mirror published an article titled, "William Cuts Camilla Clan Cash, Family Feud Goes Nuclear." The Times published an article titled, "An Heir's Duty, Moral Purge from Dangerous Precedent." Hashtags such as Arj Shock Crown Control and Arj Bowles Bombshell have trended across continents. Breakfast shows faked poll graphics. 65% of respondents support William, 22% of respondents oppose, and 13% of respondents are uncertain but enjoy the drama. Expose the Trusts, a mass of Republican activists and monarchist loyalists, chanted against each other as they passed each other outside of Buckingham Palace. Compare and contrast Leave Our Queen Alone. Wallis Simpson, the Profumo scandal, and even Henry VIII's marital struggle were all examples of instances when personal desire and public responsibility came into conflict with one another. Historians found cautionary analogies among such a cacophony of events. However, very few periods have offered the global platform that streaming documentaries and social media provide. Camilla's defense and Charles's guilt are discussed. Charles is depicted by his courtiers as being divided between his parental inclination and his desire to maintain his kingly stability. It is reported that he is alone and wonders if the institution that he has sworn to preserve is now in danger as a result of his lifelong love for Camilla. He has not spoken out in public, and the sole statement that he has issued is a brief one that reads, "His Majesty continues to have complete faith in both the Queen and the Prince of Wales." Camilla provided a more extensive rebuttal via her legal team, stating that the trusts were formed by qualified financial advisors, and that Andrew's memories are subjective, selective, and in material respects mistaken. Her friends remark on her steely composure, saying, "She survived Diana's ghost. She will make it through this." And now the hallways of the palace are buzzing with a new worry, the possibility that parliamentary committees would issue subpoenas to those qualified advisors, the possibility that Republican members of Parliament will rehearse Andrew's assertions under privilege, and the possibility that Netflix producers are already circling for rights. Andrew Parker Bowles, the years that followed. In the year 1996, Andrew wedded Rosemary Pitman, who had just gone through a divorce herself. They spent most of their time in rural Wiltshire, where they spent their weekends attending horse trials and spending time with their grandkids. The phrase genial yet haunted is how his friends characterize him. He maintains his sense of humor, but his pride is injured. After suffering a small stroke in 2023, he became more determined than ever to set the record straight, which ultimately resulted in the recording of his book, which was weaponized beyond his wildest dreams. Whether or not he is sorry about the leak is contingent upon the time of day, according to a trusted source. In the Morning Sun, he says he wishes it remained private. The family needed a reckoning, he mutters as the sun begins to set. In the path of the monarchy, there is a fork. The gamble that William made is dissected by constitutional academics. On the one hand, they see a prince establishing contemporary norms, such as the elimination of further covert subsidies in this era of digital openness. On the other hand, they are concerned about setting a precedent. Will the families of future couples forfeit patronage if there is even the slightest hint of controversy? Could such distrust discourage prospective partners from marrying into the royal family? Legal action is also a possibility. Considering that she is dependent on royal money to maintain a Grade 2 listed house, Annabelle Elliott, Camilla's sister, is considering filing a judicial appeal. Cousins who intended to use duchy bursaries to pay for their children's college education have expressed their displeasure. Others are threatening to reveal private correspondence if they lose support. Royal legal teams are getting ready to face charges of breach of promise. On the other hand, Republican campaigners take pleasure in the strife. The percentage of people who favor doing away with the monarchy has increased from 28% to 35%, according to a snapshot from YouGov. This is the most significant increase since 1997. Fissures and fault lines are located inside the property. Clarence House was originally devoted to Charles and Camilla, while Kensington was faithful to William and Catherine. However, currently there is talk of a Cold War between the two houses. There is a halt to joint engagements, and common press offices are transmitting fragile communiques. The king and prince meet, but there is a chill, says a senior equerry who knows the situation well. Unspoken apologies emanate from the universe. Behind the scenes, Catherine is working to get mediation to take place. According to reports, she has invited Camilla to private lunches, explaining that the monarchy cannot function as a divided court. Camilla, who is upset but pragmatic, has attended the lunches after receiving the invitation. Each new discovery has the potential to destroy the progress that has been made. The documents that are present in the undergrounding. Journalists actively search for the paper trail. What exactly are the Swiss vaults storing? For what assets did the duchy make a pledge should Camilla's trust deeds be made public? It is possible that the identities of co-beneficiaries, who are also senior royals, may be revealed, expanding the scope of the scandal. Only speculation fuels the ongoing narrative. The Public Accounts Committee of Parliament employs forensic accountants who stealthily request briefings. It is possible that constitutional precedent will come into conflict with custom if lawmakers call upon palace advisors. The palace, always hostile to such incursions, must weigh the optics of concealment against stonewalling. The global reverberations of, after it comes, the kingdoms of the Commonwealth. As evidence that the monarchy is a family firm ill-suited to modern egalitarian values, Republican politicians in Australia have pointed to the instability as evidence. Meanwhile, the minority government in Canada is debating whether or not to accelerate laws that would replace the sovereign on the $20 notes. It gives Caribbean countries that are making progress toward republic status a sense of confidence. After focusing on Camilla's love history in the past, international tabloids are now focusing their attention on trust diagrams and property registers. In a Brazilian news website, a flowchart depicting suspected entities is captioned with the phrase, "Da paixão ao paraíso fiscal." A Japanese editor expresses astonishment by stating, "It's Shakespeare with spreadsheets. Children are the victims of personal aftershocks." Tom Parker Bowles makes a rare remark. "My mother has endured decades of vilification. However, pals believe that he is secretly concerned about the possibility of losing financial support for younger relatives." I stand by her character. Although Laura Lopes stays away from the cameras, she has made a veiled threat to her friends that, if the attacks on Mum continue, more truths will surface. William and Catherine's kids only see that their dad looks tired and that their grandma doesn't drink tea. When the courtiers think back to the traumatic paparazzi pursuits that occurred in the 1990s, they redouble their attempts to protect them. There is a stark contrast between the narratives of power and punishment. William's purge and George VI's moral makeover following the abdication are two instances that analysts compare and contrast. Both of these instances involve successors drawing clear distinctions between their personal faults and their public role. However, while George's Britain remains submissive, William's Britain now faces a constant barrage of 24/7 feeds, conspiracy podcasts, and an endless array of meme makers. Nevertheless, there are some who see opportunities. Dr. Imogen Harcourt, a historian, believes that if the prince maintains transparency, he has the potential to restructure the agreement that exists between the crown and the people. But if we continue to take half measures, skepticism will become more entrenched. There is a dilemma for a king: love, duty, and legacy. Over the course of a late February evening, Charles is seen sitting alone in the chapel at Buckingham Palace. He is seen by the staff kneeling with his head lowered and his hands shaking. There is no information available on whether he prayed for Camilla, for William, or for the ghosts of the past. When contacted via phone, a senior bishop simply provided the following response: "A father's heart is the hidden motor of the state." The king is confronted with a disagreement for the very first time since ascending, one that has the potential to do harm to both his wife and his son. If he backs William, he will be undermining Camilla's family, and if he shows support for the queen, he will run the danger of looking to be a prisoner to the very secrets that the contemporary monarchy must reject. Outlines of possible ways to go. 1. It is imperative that an impartial audit of all relatives who get funding from the duchy be published. Putting long-standing gray practices in the spotlight is a risk. You will be rewarded with moral superiority and the possibility of regaining trust. 2. Through the use of private mediation, William, Charles, and Camilla collaborate to reach a compromise that would restore a portion of their stipends while being closely monitored. It is possible that leaks will portray it as a backroom stitch-up. 3. Intervention by Parliament legislators document the relationships that are eligible to receive cash from the crown. There are inherent constitutional risks involved. Clarity for future generations of people is the reward. 4. Attrition and the status quo are two examples of palace stonewalling, which is a gamble on news cycle weariness. The continuous release of leaks and the rise of republicanism present a significant risk. Observers are of the opinion that a hybrid consisting of restricted openness and a new governance framework may develop. But time is everything. If you hesitate, you allow the conspiracy to outpace the facts. The conclusion is that we are at a crossroads of legacy and redemption. Over the course of 9 stormy centuries, the British crown has endured murder, lunacy, invasion, and abdication on account of its ability to change its mythologies at a rate that is quicker than its detractors could tear them down. The tumult of today is more subtle. It is not a sword, but rather a spreadsheet. It is not an exile, but rather an Excel file. That being said, the stakes are not any less existential. It is a generational ethic that contemporary monarchy must be honest or be nothing. And Prince William's decree, which is forceful but potentially divisive, symbolizes this generational ethic. Queen Camilla, who was molded in controversy and survival, is forced to confront a history that she believed to be buried for the first time. King Charles, who is both romantic and besieged, is required to act as a mediator between blood and bond, while under more intense scrutiny than any of his predecessors have ever faced. While some foretell a rebirth, others predict a collapse. The lessons of history show us that every crisis also gives rise to ingenuity. The monarchy is now situated on that precarious bridge that Andrew Parker Bowles once asserted to be extending between what was and what must come after it. In the shadow of crowns, the decisions that its human souls make will determine whether it falls apart or carries them on. This is true as it has always been the case. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.